Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Lydia Rickards, and I'm the Executive Director of the Labrador West Chamber of Commerce. It's great to see faces from the community and industry and government here this evening. Let's start our session tonight by acknowledging the land on which we stand. We acknowledge Labrador as the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Innu, the Inuit, and the Naskapi people. We strive to be responsible stewards of the land and to respect the unique cultures, languages, and traditions of all who call it home. We commit ourselves to work in a spirit of truth and reconciliation to make a better future for all. And that's what this project is about, right? The future for all, really. Tonight, we are going to talk about the future of Lab West Summit, a conference that we hosted in February that was all about the roadblocks to development and how we can tackle them. Tonight, we'll talk about the run-up to the summit itself, what we learned, and what happens next. I'll talk about things from a chamber perspective, and then I'll introduce Gregor McCaskill and Christobel from Gardner Pinfold. That's the group of economists that we commissioned to do an economic outlook for the region. During the summit, Gregor McCaskill presented their economic outlook, and tonight, he's got a few updates, and it's essentially he's delivering his final report. I'm going to start off by managing your expectations. Unfortunately, I'm not here to make some big, shiny announcement and, bring out a huge novelty check and be like, guys, we solved it all. Because, well, if only if it was that easy. But unfortunately, it's not. These things are going to take time, are going to take patience, are going to take a bit of structure. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is our kind of plan going forward. But I just wanted to manage those expectations, so feel free to walk out at any point if you want. It's all good. But I want to let you know what we've been working on. It's slow, it's continual progress, it's ongoing, but it's in the right direction. I think in the past, we focus a lot on the past, right? What hasn't worked before, what we haven't done yet. But, let's think about the future. Looking back, it's not achieving anything. Let's move forward. And often with these events and initiatives, for weeks and weeks on the lead up to the event, you hear about it on the radio, it's all over social media, and everyone's talking about it. Then the event happens, and then nothing. You feel like, well, what even happened? Why did they even do that? And I'm just here, we want to give you this update so that, we're still working on things behind the scenes. It doesn't mean that we're not working really hard. So before I move on to speaking about the summit, I just want to remind you that I'm here today on behalf of the Chamber. I don't speak for the towns. I don't speak for IOC Takora Champion. I don't speak for the government. I'm just speaking for the Chamber. And maybe myself. So what is the Chamber? Let's have a refresher on who we are and what we do. So here's our mandate. We are a non-profit, non-partisan organization dedicated to enhancing the economic prosperity and quality of life in Labrador West. What does that really mean? Well, we support the business community, our region's growth and economic development, and the community at large. The Chamber itself, for those that you don't know, is like a membership club. Organizations pay a yearly fee to join and have access to a range of benefits. We share resources, we host training sessions, networking, social events, conferences like this, and MyNext. In terms of our structure, we have a board of directors made up of 12 volunteers. We meet once a month as a board, and the executive, well, we speak most days. Sorry, guys. It's made up of 7 men, 5 women, and then me. So in terms of gender diversity, we're pretty even. And this is mainly a comment to the boys' club comments. I don't know what you're referring to, but I'm the one that stood here talking. So I promise you, I'm very lucky to work with a very engaged board who want nothing but the best for the community, and we have great representation there. Okay, so then there's me. So as executive director, I am the only member of staff at the moment. And I just want you to bear that in mind as we talk about these action points tonight. Any organizations can pay their membership and become a member of the chamber. To become a board member, you must own or manage an organization in town. We hold an election every year during our annual general meeting, and if you're interested in becoming a volunteer board member, that's where you would put yourself forward. Again, this has come back from feedback of, we need to destroy the old boys club. Like, join us, please. We'd love to have you. So all that being said, we're here to grow and support the business community. And we have nothing to do with grocery stores, okay? If you want to start a grocery store, please, go for it. We honestly have no control over anyone who wants to open a business here, really. And we're here to support them in whatever crazy ideas you might have. We currently have about 100 members, and I know that can grow. I know it can double, but it takes support of our business community. We have no core funding, so staff wages are paid from membership fees and various projects and funding. And anyone that has worked for or volunteered with nonprofits will know funding is a constant challenge. But that relationship between the chamber and the membership is symbiotic, and we need to support each other in order to grow. When we first started talking about the summit and which topics we were going to cover, it was difficult because we could have covered so many. We focused on these 6 pillars, which are labor, energy, travel, mining, housing, and healthcare. And I had to put the words up there because somebody said that the iron ore cart looked like a muffin. So we have no problems with muffins in Labrador West. Go to Wow Bean, they're great. So mining. And none of these issues exist in a vacuum, right? They're so interlinked. You can't talk about one without the other a lot of the time. And these are some really big topics with some complex issues. And we were never going to solve everything in a 3-day conference. But I feel like we have restarted conversations that haven't been had in a while and put the challenges of Lab West back to the forefront of people's minds. With the planning process, we started contacting local subject matter experts and ministers, some of which were easier to get hold of than others. And we want them to not only be guest speakers, but to attend and listen. And that's the important part, that they are truly listening and understanding our needs and our needs as a community. Some of the ideas that we're going to discuss, you may think, did you guys really need to have a big fancy conference to come to the understanding that we need more doctors? Like, we know all these things from living here, anecdotally, but, we do need to invest in data as well. Data is important. As we approach the government asking for a bigger piece of the pie, as Ron Barron would say, we can't go with anecdotes. We can't go with a story, well, I was sat in a merge 2 weeks ago, and that we need the data. Let's cut through the clutter and just focus on the data. We need to collect and present real numbers. Gardner Pinfold have done a lot of that, and Gregor will speak to that shortly. But we will continue to collect data any way that we can and formally present that to government as we apply for funding and those kinds of things. And whilst we're on the subject of data, in the run-up to the summit, we wanted to collect as many topics and questions from the public as possible. And we did this for many reasons. We wanted to hear from the public, of course, and get some ideas that weren't on our radar. But we also wanted to see the kind of ratio of the community's concerns. We collected your responses in 3 ways: emails, a public consultation here at the Arts and Culture Centre, and through a big post-it board, which was positioned here during the consultation and then in the mall. We received over 500 post-it notes on that board. And we've taken these alongside other queries and put them into 9 categories. Obviously, we were just focusing on 6 for the summit, but the queries were kind of in 9 categories: healthcare, travel, grocery, seniors, housing in general, education, recreation, childcare, and town infrastructure. Some of those issues were not on our list, but I think it's important to note that we're still going to use that feedback in the future in some way. Lots of people raise questions about education, especially during our last public consultation. And that hasn't just gone in the bin now. Sorry. in the trash now. We still have that. We still want to work on that. Maybe we have our own mini education summit. If we all decide that this is a productive way of solving these issues, maybe that's what we do next. And so I just kind of put this just so that you can see the ratio of the concerns. The biggest one was healthcare, without a doubt. And travel up there, the grocery store was a big thing. Seniors housing, you can see those there. I would say this isn't very formal data collection. We asked people to write on Post-it notes. And people did, we didn't have set categories or anything like that, so it was just whatever came into their mind at the time. And someone did want an A&W and a water park. So Belinda, if you could work on some kind of big water park. And treasure. There we go. No homework, yeah. That's a big thing. So for any of you that were there at the summit, it was an intense 3 days. It was a lot, information overload. And we were never going to cram in absolutely every single thing that we want to cover. But as we went along, themes started to present themselves, the big one being partnerships. And partnership comes in many forms. It's not just financial support. It's time and skills and support in kind. It's sharing ideas and resources. But it has to work both ways, right? It's two or more engaged people. It can't be passive. We have to think, I don't know if this is a silly example, but I think of, when you run into an old friend or somebody that you haven't seen in a while at the store, and you're like, oh, we should get a coffee, or we should get a drink. And then you don't get a coffee or go for a drink. Because someone needs to be driving it, and people get busy, right? That's just life, that's just how it happens. But I think it kind of shows that someone always needs to be driving it in order to execute. Understanding roles is a big thing. We've got the 3 levels of government, and you hear people oh, the province isn't doing this. Well, actually, that's the municipality's job. Or the town isn't doing this. Well, actually, that's the community's job. And so I think it's actually really important for us to all understand whose responsibility all these things are, because otherwise, it just gets messy. We need to have a work plan going forward and really understand whose responsibility certain things are. And I don't want to focus on the negative, because all of this is about progress, but I'll use this example. I hate litter. I can't be the only person here that does. I live near Tanya Lake, and after a sunny day, the next day, the litter is awful. Now, you could say that, the town need to empty the trash cans more often, or maybe the town need to put more trash cans out there. Well, yeah, you're probably right, that maybe they could do that. But we're also the ones leaving the litter on the ground, right? And this is a really small, kind of silly example, but make that bigger. We all have a part to play, and I think we need to all understand that in order to have productive path forward. And finally, they're embracing change. We need change in order to grow, that's fact. And so, there's a few things that we need to do differently. And, some people may be set in their ways or think, well, we've never done it like that before. Well, and you've also never seen results before. So we need to change. Okay, so day 1. Mayor Belinda Adams opened the summit with a passionate speech, as always. She quoted a colleague. It's a phrase that's become quite the catchphrase in Lab West. We want to be a town with a mind, not a mind with a town. We need to be proactive rather than reactive. When you're reactive, you're too late. And there's some of these topics, maybe we are being a bit too reactive, but now is the time. Belinda did a really good job at setting the tone for the event, and also I know she said tonight, thank you for your ongoing engagement in this. Leah Patterson made a presentation, and you can't speak about the future of Lab West without speaking about the youth, the literal future of Lab West. Leah's such an engaging speaker, and she's only 16. And the way she advocates for her community and her peers is really inspiring, and I hope she does become a politician representing us in the future. No pressure. Minister Lisa Dempster of Labrador Affairs did a lovely welcome address, and she quoted Margaret Mead in her address. And the quote goes, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." And I think it's important that we are empowering ourselves to advocate for ourselves, because that's what we really need to do here. And Lisa told us, you've got our attention. What's happening in Labrador City and Warbush matters to us. And we see the potential, and we also know there's challenges, and we want to continue to work with you, which was so great to hear, especially early on. It helped to set the tone for the summit. And I'm glad I have it on tape. We need to hold everyone to accountable for all of these actions going forward. It's a good time for you to say, actually, that who was in the room in the summit. We did have representation from federal, provincial, municipal levels, and from every political party as well. Gregor, that you'll see there, he's going to join us on Zoom shortly. I'll let him talk about his economic outlook. He had a great time in Lab West and enjoyed the hospitality for sure. But even during the summit, he was still compiling data and that kind of thing. So he would like to deliver a final report to kind of draw a line under that. It was important for us to bring in an economist to do a report that helped to inform this summit, because someone had to do the formal research into these roadblocks and pull together this data. I know it's going to allow us really to make good cases to government to going forward. So the Premier, Dr. Andrew Fury, joined us as keynote speaker, which was really important. It's important that he's engaged in these things, and everybody that showed up obviously showed their commitment. But I think Belinda even said it on the first day, to look around and see all these stakeholders in one room. It was important, and it was great to see. You never know who's going to show up, right? Yvonne Jones, MP, joined us as well for the big IOC announcement about decarbonisation. And it really highlights that we're still in a period of growth and innovation, and that the community is worth the investment. Okay. Excuse me. So let's dive into some of these, some of the pillars now. We started with a presentation from Sandy Penny, who is the VP and Chief Operating Officer of Labrador Grenfell Zone NL Health Services. Sandy gave us an overview of the Labrador Grenfell Zone, and I will say all the presentations are going to be available on YouTube in the next few days. This one for sure will be a really worthwhile one to check out. She gave us an overview of the Labrador Grenfell Zone, an update on staffing, saying that we're currently fully staffed. I don't know if we would agree with that as such, but from their numbers point of view, we are fully staffed. They're facing challenges with recruitment like everywhere, and accommodation is a big issue. Incentives, the government gives staff incentives to come here, so that's short term when they first move, but going forward, it's really up to the community. It's up to us to retain them. So tonight, we're actually going to talk a lot about recruitment and retention. It was a really big topic, and it's doesn't just apply to healthcare. But I think it's something that we can feel empowered that we can actually help with. She mentioned we're in the early stages of co-locating the family care team in Lab West with Physio North to deliver a team-based approach to care. And she did speak about the medical transportation program. That scheme, I know it's new, it's not perfect, but you've got to start somewhere, and so it is evolving and improving. And she also spoke about delivering transparent, factual information. I think something is very easy here to get wrapped up in Facebook. It feels as a community like our number one way in which we communicate, even before Google or anything, when is this shop open, all the way to aggression is, I'll just say aggression. But I think that the way that we communicate, like, we need to, as a community, to get better at that. Like, from a healthcare perspective, you know, if somebody's talking about wait times in merge or names a doctor by name on concerning, like, that's technically defamation. Like, you have to be careful. Like, Facebook is not the place for that. And also, it's not productive in any way. Like, if you want to make a formal complaint, follow that process, and maybe something will actually change. But something that I've spoken to a few colleagues about recently is maybe we do need to have a one-stop like page of who you contact about certain things. You know, if you want to make a complaint about this, if you want to get feedback on that, if you want support on this, like we have teams here that you might not even know about. So that could be something that we could work on. We also had a presentation from Dr. Patrick Parfrey about the NL Health Accord, which was another interesting watch. Essentially, we'll need to be healthier. That's the summary. But I've been thinking a lot about like what can we do as a community to become healthier. Like Town Lab City, Silver Sneakers, the Women's Centre, like they have lots of recreation programs and exercise programs and stuff like that, but they kind of have their own audiences. And the people that don't want to engage with those programs, like, what could we do to help? Do we need different kind of programming? Do we need to support people more to do those things independently? You know, could we fund cooking classes on healthy meals, or could we hold information sessions? Like, we want to understand from a community outreach point, like, what is actually going to be helpful? We had 2 healthcare panels. The first was the professionals and then the community. And I'll go over a few of the topics that we discussed. Again, recruitment and retention. This is a big one. We need to understand our role in the community, like what can we do? We've already spoken a lot from a chamber perspective about having a welcome committee. So let's say we have a formal process when a doctor moves to town, they do their orientation with the hospital, and then they have like a town orientation where someone shows them around, and maybe they go to church, or maybe their kids want to join a sports team, or they need to suss out the schools. Like, I know this seems like such an easy thing, but it's not always getting done. I know that it's something that the mines have invested in as well, and different companies. Like, I also work at the Gateway, and so I see a lot of people like from IOC, from SMS recently, bringing new colleagues to the Gateway to kind of show them around. But we're kind of relying on the goodwill of people to do that. Maybe we need a formal process, almost like a checklist. I love a checklist. Someone gets into town. Okay, in the first week, they're going to have their work orientation. They're going to have their community orientation. Someone's going to take them fishing. I don't fish, but someone's going to take them fishing, and those kinds of things. Like, I will say, I moved here 2 years ago, and sometimes it does feel like I don't think that people are purposely gatekeeping their secret spots. Maybe fishing spots, but like, until you find your crew, until you find your tribe, like, it can be isolating, right? And so what can we do to facilitate that? You know, for people from different cultures or whatever, like, we can be doing more. And I think, like, back in the day, maybe it did happen a bit more. Maybe we're a bit more neighborly. But let's have a formal process. You know, there's only so much that we can do with maybe recruitment, but again, retention is the community. We spoke about a well-being team. I think it's also just a note for like the people that are showing up. Maybe we invest loads of energy in them for like 2 weeks, and then it's like, bye. We need to do it longer term than that. You know, have those check-ins. You know, throughout their time here. And, you know, what is the best way for us to build those support systems? Recreation, I think, can be huge in that. And I say, like, not everybody wants to go snowmobiling, and that's completely fine, but we can find a niche for everybody. I mean, we had the Oddball Bazaar a few weeks ago at Iron Rock. I didn't know we had so many nerds, but it was packed, and it just goes to show, like, oh, maybe that's a whole new audience that we can work with. And I think it's also like empowering ourselves to take on those roles. When we are recruiting, I was lucky enough to actually attend a conference in St. John's a few weeks ago, which was all about the recruiting of doctors. I'll say doctors because the P word I can't say. The fancy word for doctors, that's the one, Lisa. And, it's a lot of remote communities that have the same issues that we do, and some of them have kind of figured it out. I mean, everybody's there because they want to learn more, but it was really eye-opening. And some of these things seem really basic, like, oh, I might take somebody for a coffee when they first move here. Like, I know it seems obvious, but if it's not currently happening, it can't be that obvious. So it was really interesting to hear what other communities are doing and how they fund those things. And Toby and I have spoken a lot with the team at the hospital about their kind of formal orientation approach. And I was shown a one-page document of, the population of Lab City, and there's a mall, and you can go skiing, and I think we need to do more. It's actually something that the Francophone community do really well. And Julie shared like a little booklet that they give out to people. Like, it's such a basic thing. Like, I put out the magazines that you see around town, the Connections magazines. We put those out, and let's make a nice little shiny thing that we can pass out to people, so that you're not thinking, well, what am I going to do on a Friday night? Also, we spoke a lot about exit interviews, so we could understand, like, when somebody does quit their job and leave town, like, why? Is there something more that we could have done? But actually, it's also important to have stay interviews of, well, I suppose, like, one-to-ones, like, semi-regularly, to understand, like, okay, what are you enjoying, but what could we do more of? And maybe you can kind of catch them if they're having thoughts about having one foot out the door. We also have Marika here tonight, who is the face of healthcare recruitment. And thank you for coming. And in terms of marketing, like, I think we need to probably be a bit more creative as well. I mean, you don't need to be around Toby very long until he starts talking about skiing. But essentially, like, if we're trying to find new audiences, like, well, why, rather than we can't keep hold of people that find their winters too harsh, okay, well, why don't we find people that like winter? Why don't we advertise in skiing magazines? Why don't we be a bit more creative in our recruitment? A big thing in retention as well is also the work-life balance. Like, healthcare professionals work incredibly hard, incredibly long hours. And, it's all good talking about recreation if they don't have any time to go and recreate. I don't know what the short of that is. And also, like, youth and the next generation of doctors, like, maybe we can start going into the schools more earlier, getting the kids interested in medicine from a young age. Also, the options of, like, bringing in student doctors. I know that's dependent on who you have and who's willing to take those on. We had a conversation about, can we incentivize medical students to return if we pay some of their fees, or we give them discounted housing, or, again, it all comes down to, let's be creative. Let's try something that we haven't tried before. Something that Pat Parfee spoke about was embracing virtual care. Those apps, like, it's not going anywhere. And I'm not saying that it should be used for absolutely everything, of course not, but it's a good option to have, and maybe if certain people are resilient to it, they don't want to resistant to it. What can we do to maybe encourage people to use it? Do you want a bit of training? Do you want someone to help you, like, walk you through it? Like, what would be helpful to you? Because in my eyes, like, that's an easy win. Okay, so I would just before I move on from healthcare, at the conference I went to, we were talking about recruitment programs, and there is a Chamber of Commerce in Ontario, I believe. They actually fund a doctor from their Chamber of Commerce. They have a program, their members chip into it, and they fund one doctor. And so maybe we do need to think outside the box and, look at that kind of thing. Again, we can't rely on IOC for everything. I'm talking about the whole business community. But, these are the kinds of things that we should be looking up. And healthcare, as you saw before, was like a big topic with our Post-it notes. And I don't just mean like healthcare, like people wrote really specific things. We had really specific questions about processes and that kind of thing. For the purposes of the summit, we did have to speak more in broad strokes, like major themes. But I will say the healthcare minister was not at the summit, but now he's retiring anyway. So we need to engage with the next one and pick up these conversations. Again, like, this isn't going in the trash. Like, we can move forward with this. Maybe we have a mini summit about healthcare, if that would be productive. Right. Day 2, our MHA Jordan Brown opened up day 2, which was all about industry and travel. Minister Andrew Parsons from the Department of Industry, Energy and Technology wants us to think about ourselves more on a global scale, right? These may be local operations, our mines, but they are global players. He encouraged us to reach out to the department when we need support. We will be doing just that. And he emphasized the importance of partnerships. Joel Crepew from Champion, he's the Director of Projects and Innovation. He spoke about wanting to build partnerships. I'm not going to get into the weeds of the Canby project, but I will say they want to work with us. They want to work with local businesses. They've already been speaking with our chamber members about procurement. Like, they do want to engage with us, so let's work with them. Joe Broking spoke about the Takora CCAA head-on. Obviously, we won't hear an update on that until the next court date next week, I believe. And Mike McCann from IOC highlighted some of IOC's work in recent years and their ongoing commitment to the well-being of the region. And it's really refreshing to hear, like, they're super invested in this. That's it's not just all about mining. Like, they see the importance in healthcare, housing, childcare, and all of our pillars, really. Jennifer Williams, the president and CEO of NL Hydro, she delivered a general update, talked about the shift to green energy, it's on its way, big decisions to be made in the next few years. They did a big survey recently. They collected a lot of feedback from Labrador. And so she addressed some of those issues, like that balance of growth while still, maintaining the services. We want them to be, reaching for something new whilst, dropping the ball on the existing stuff. She spoke about, reliable services. She spoke about the frustrating outages. So hopefully it won't always be that way. But also she spoke about extreme weather. We had a couple of situations recently with extreme weather causing like outages and stuff. And so it was good to hear her take to discuss that. Then we had our industry panels. So we had both the industry and the community, so covering social and economic development. FIFO is a big topic. I feel it is on the daily basis. And these guys are saying they don't want FIFO, but it's the only option right now until we can build more accommodation. I think, again, it goes back to housing is a big topic here. FIFO, it's more expensive, right? No, that's not no one's first choice, but we need to tackle the housing issues first. But they're not just thinking about it in terms of a housing point of view. They also understand the bigger impact. They're talking about investing lots in training, to have people locally, skilled people locally that can do those jobs. But sometimes, if you have a specialist project, you need to fly someone in to do it. But they are all investing in their workforce as well. Retention, again, retention is a big topic. Like, new people moving here, they find it, not to speak broadly, but, isolation. We need more travel options. And so that can make this isolated place feel even more isolated. And again, lots of stuff comes back to housing. And how we attract developers. I'll talk about that when we go on to the housing topic. And this is the point of the summit where we started talking about our regional task force. For those of you that don't know, we have the Lab West Regional Task Force, and essentially it's high-up people in mining, all levels of government, even like Fairmont are involved, and this task force gets together like once a quarter or so, and something that was a big theme for the summit was, okay, well, how do we revitalize this task force? How do we kind of shake it up and move it on to the next phase? And something that, from a chamber perspective, that we started talking about was, well, what if we had like a member of staff, for example, that reported to the task force that was the person that got this stuff done? Because it's all very well and good, like I'm sure there's lots of people here that sit on different committees. If you don't have a dedicated member of staff prioritizing those action points, stuff doesn't get done. And so, we're talking about maybe the next phase is that we employ somebody that just looks after that, a kind of project manager role, if you will. And I mean, that organization structure, the task force, from a chamber perspective, we feel needs to be kind of tethered to a non-profit. I know everybody is familiar with non-profits here, but essentially that's how you apply for funding, right? That's how you get those levels of government funding is as a non-profit. And so, we started talking about this idea of maybe we need to start a development corporation. And then that corporation, and whatever it looks like, non-profit, would have a dedicated member of staff, full-time employee, that would work with the task force to execute the plans, the work plan that they come up with. At the moment, we don't have any government representation locally, and so this would be a really good way to kind of fill that gap, because the task force is government people. It's that really close link. Yvonne Jones also was there, did a lovely presentation for us, and Jennifer's here tonight from her team. Thank you for coming. Then we moved on to travel. So we had a panel discussion with the community, and then Ashton Berry, who's the VP Commercial Programs for PAL Airlines. And that was a hot discussion, shall we say. We spoke about a few things. I'm sure lots of us here make use of the QC 500 discount code for flights. Is that something that would work here? Well, it's not just as easy as, can we get discounted flights, please? Like the QC 500 code is about leisure and travel within, for people from Quebec to use to travel within their province. And so we would really need to understand why we want it and how we're going to use it apart from just cheaper flights. What would our goal be? We spoke about the cost of tickets. There's not really anything that they can do about that. If we shout at PAL long enough, they're not going to suddenly go, okay, we'll make it cheaper. We spoke about the reliability. And it's actually very valuable having Ashley in there because there's lots of things that we didn't even know were factors here. And, with staffing at the Warbush Airport, especially in the winter, they can't start or end flights in Warbush because we don't have a hangar, and they often have challenges with de-icing and that kind of thing. So I think the travel thing, we can feel quite demotivated because you think, well, what can we do? Really, it's a federal airport, and PAL is our only provider. What can we really do? But maybe we can support in terms of the staff at the airport, supporting them with that. Firefighting came up, and that's a bigger issue, really. But the fact there's no federal firefighters there, maybe we need to get a bit more creative with that. And we do need to, I think, as a community, we do need to approach other airlines for sure, and be more aggressive in that. But it's not just as easy as, hi, WestJet, like, we'd love for you to fly here. So again, we need to be intentional about that. We had a very good conversation, actually, with the CEO of Deer Lake Airport, and she gave us some good advice. We need to do some kind of research report and get the data to really understand what kind of numbers we're seeing through the airport, because that's, again, it goes back to data. Once we have that, we know we can go back to, we can present that to, someone like Porter and make a compelling case. We can't just go to Porter Airlines and be like, we don't like PAL. They're not very nice to us. It doesn't work like that, right? So, yes, yelling at PAL is not achieving anything. Okay, day 3. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. I'll try and speed up. Day 3, so housing and labor. I pronounce this lady's name wrong every time. Julia Malali? That's probably wrong. The CEO of NL Housing Corporation gave a presentation, which was great. I would recommend watching that when we've got it up on YouTube. So their mandate, they're really focused around supporting those most vulnerable in the community. And a lot of the data that she presented was actually from the 2021 census, but hoping before I do my final report that we can get some good data as well. There's lots of things she spoke about, we're already aware of, houses are more expensive here. But I'm actually interested in solutions and the way forward. So we had 2 panels. Minister Pike and the community members sat. He attended the summit, sat on the panel, and then a few days later his position changed and he was no longer the Minister of Housing. So again, I'm not sure what he said that might have got him in trouble, but we will continue to work with the new minister. He spoke about senior housing being a priority. I know there was a consultant that was hired to work on that project, and I can't speak to that senior housing project myself, but I can say that there is positive movement on that initiative. We need all kinds of housing, right? Not just senior housing, not just affordable housing. We need apartment blocks, more rental opportunities, like different size properties. And yes, we need to think about the social side and how we can help with financing and, the affordable side. But the biggest thing is we actually just need to build stuff. Thank you, good night. Just imagine, we just need to build stuff, guys. But we need to find home builders who are willing to do the work and, engage with groups. Before the summit, I was trying to talk to the Canadian Home Builders Association have an office in St. John's. And I was trying to get her to come along, the lady to come along to the summit. It didn't quite happen, but, she's never been to Labrador. She's in charge of that department for all that. office, for the whole province. She's never been here. So let's get the people here. I know that Ron has said, I've tried to attract developers in the past, they won't come here. I don't know how aggressive that was, but we're talking about, let's pay for them to come here for 2 days. Let's have a developer day. Let's try something new. Because if they're going to pay for their own ticket, maybe they're not going to come here. But let's schmooze them, and maybe they'll want to build stuff. I know a lot about construction. We spoke about tax credit incentives for home builders, which is something that we would work with the government on. Minister Pike at the time says it's something that the department would be open to talking about. Maybe that's why I don't know. But again, it's programs, like government programs. I've worked for 2 nonprofits now, and some of these programs that we apply to are super easy. They're open year round. Where you stand with it. Others, they advertise it. You've got 2 weeks to apply to it. You have to get all this information together, and then the deadline's gone. There's a lot of hoops to jump through, right? So maybe there's a bit more flexibility with that. There's a lot of red tape. How do we cut through it? Again, partnerships. And a partnership doesn't have to be the cash injection. Maybe it's support with permits and those kinds of things. And maybe we do a mini summit for housing. I just said a developer day. Show them what it can look like. Let's build a modular showroom and show them around. Give them the vision. I don't know who's going to pay for the showroom, but then we can really crunch the numbers and understand what that costs to build. I know co-ops was a big thing that came up as well at the public consultation. Again, trying new things. Municipalities need to be able to access funding for infrastructure. Again, government funding. We need to understand it better, and what we can use, what we can utilize. My laptop's telling me I'm talking too much. Housing touches on everything, but even from a business perspective, if you bring staff in and you house them for a couple of months at the start of their contract, and then they have to find something in town, well, they can't find anything, and then they leave. I've heard that from a few people. So, it's not just, it's impacting so many ways. I had a presentation from John Ross de Vries, who's the Director of Supply Chain and Contractor Management with IOC. He talked about how we've seen growth within the region, which demonstrates the growth and the value, but the population's increased, but we haven't been able to satisfy the demand and close that gap. So we need to work out how we close that gap. We had a presentation from Claude Gagne and Stephanie from the town of Fairmont. They've just built a new affordable housing project there. Now, I appreciate Quebec, it's very different. They received a huge cash injection from the government and from industry to make that happen. We're the same distance, we're the same climate, partnerships, again, what can we learn from them of how they did that? I promise I'm nearly finished. And the same with Goose Bay. I know Goose Bay do a lot of modular building as well. Okay, so labour. That's our last pillar. Labour's kind of like a big catch-all because it just affects so many things. We had a presentation from Justin Andrews, who's the international rep of USW District 6. He raised issues on behalf of his workers. Sheila Drover from the Lab West Childcare Centre. Heyman spoke to us on behalf of childcare organisations of Lab West. Waiting list of 500 children in our communities, which is just insane. We had a panel discussion with Jessica McCormack, who's the president of NL Federation of Labour, and Janessa Cole, also from HR Project Partners. Again, recruitment and retention. These are easy things that we can work on. We had a presentation from Stanley Oliver, who is the manager of Trades NL out of Goose Bay. So he does training for underserved indigenous communities or women in the trades. And we've got a big gap there in the labor market. And so how are we filling those gaps? And that's where childcare comes into it. You know, people that want to get back into the workforce, but they can't find childcare for their children. So we had a panel with Stan, Khalid Al-Hari, who's the senior management of employment services with the Association of New Canadians, and Brent Howell, who's the Dean of Natural Resources and Industrial Trades with the College of the North Atlantic. And so, you know, we were talking about training opportunities here, but really we need to understand the numbers. If it made sense, obviously we'd love to offer it here, I'm sure, but we really need to understand what the need is. And again, accommodation. So, yeah, just seeing what the opportunity is there. On that final day, we also received an open letter to the group, an anonymous letter from the Filipino community that raised a few issues. And, you know, it spoke about a few different things like public transport, lack of public transport. It can be quite hard to get a vehicle here if, when you first move here, if you're not prepared to go and buy a huge truck. So especially in the winter. So that was a challenge. But something that was also raised was there's a group of people here that aren't earning minimum wage. So you understand why they want to be anonymous. Obviously, we don't know the employer. We reached out to... it's an anonymous letter, but I reached out to the person that passed it on to me. And essentially, those people aren't willing to come forward and speak to the relevant department. Like, we had the Department of Immigration in the room, and immediately they were like, we need to talk about this now, and super proactive, but people are scared. They don't want to lose their jobs. They don't feel like they can come forward, right? So what can we do to support them just... not in a way that, you know, is gonna... Oh, no, that's okay. I've spoken so much. Oh, thank you. Enjoy your class. Yeah. They laughed at me the other day at softball when I couldn't hit the ball. I saw you, Bruce. I saw you laughing. So yeah, obviously the whole minimum wage, that's illegal, and raised alarm bells for sure. And you know, we had a lot of people there from the Association of New Canadians as well. And so we need to understand how we can help in a way that maybe isn't as direct, but is still helpful. I promise there's not vodka in here. I'm not used to speaking. After this, you'll be like, I understand why Lydia works like behind the scenes and Toby talks. So here's our kind of general takeaways. Like, everyone's part in this. Like, we need to understand it. Like, and I'm not just talking about the different department offices and things. Like, we need to understand, like, what is an Yvonne Jones issue? What is a Jordan Brown issue? Like, we need to understand that to go forward. Let's keep doing research. Like, before the summit, we were looking up, there's a town in Australia that didn't allow FIFO and like how that worked. There's a place on Vancouver Island where they teamed together and had like a team of healthcare workers. Like, we're already collecting all of these case studies, but we can't just go, okay, like copy paste, let's do that here. We need to understand like what part of that worked here, what part of that could work here. And again, going back to the possible new nonprofit, development corporation, like let's formalize a structure for some action groups. Let's get together more like this. Let's have more public forums. Let's have more mini summits. Let's get educated and let's do more advocacy work and opportunities for partnerships, everyone. Just wrapping up now, I just want to take the opportunity to again, like, thank our sponsors and our funding partners that that worked with us to get the summit going. This work is ongoing, but we couldn't have done it without the support of everybody here. So have a little round of applause to thanks. We have a few of them here this evening, so I just want to say thank you. Also, our moderator, Ed Kratz, who was fantastic, and our Chamber Board of Directors, thanks for getting stuck in and being unflappable, unlike me. So I'm just going to do a real quick blitz through kind of some general takeaways. We need to get together like this more often. We need to work on community outreach. We need to get better at communication that is not concerning on Facebook. We need to look at what other cities and towns do. We need to be patient. But just because we're not updating you all the time on what we're working on doesn't mean we're not working on it, I promise. We need to be realistic. Progress takes time. We need to partner more. We need to get better at advocating for ourselves. We need to get organized. Plans need structure. We need a work plan. We have task force meetings for the next 2 days, and we'll know where we stand a bit more at the end of the week. And once I have another update, I will put together my final report and publish it. And look at everyone so fancy. So please work with us. Please be patient. Belinda opened the summit. She said that the chamber got us to the start line, and now we've all got to finish it. And I agree. So please, all of us, let's work together and finish it. Thank you for listening.